there. I am so excited for our third episode of Mind Over Matter, where we interview professionals that are helping other professionals. And I'm here with Suzanne Weller, who is based in the Seattle area. She is a change management and leadership expert. She is a consultant and a coach, and I am so happy to have gotten to know you a little bit better and to learn more about you right now. So welcome, Suzanne. Thank you for being here. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Laura. It's wonderful to be here.
Thanks. How's Seattle this morning?
It's good. It's now finally summer, so it was actually 94 degrees here yesterday. So yeah, that's pretty steamy for these parts. So.
And do people relish it, or is it so out of character that people are like, we just need to stay inside?
Both. I mean, people here really love the sun when it's out. But 94 is a little hot. Not everybody has AC here, so it can be a bit of a struggle. But we tend to, it's an outdoorsy kind of town, so people usually embrace the sun as much as they can.
And in terms of COVID and how it's affecting Seattle, I know that had been an area where there had been a lot of early infections. How's everybody's disposition right now? Can you give us a little update on that?
Yeah, I mean, it obviously depends on who you talk to because it's such a personal thing. But I think a lot of us are hopefully optimistic, but very cautious at the same time. So it's very much, you walk around. I mean, I live in the city, so there's masks everywhere. People are very, I think, considerate of each other. So, but it's, our numbers have flattened, but it's really a matter of, making sure that we stay that way.
Yeah, it's scary times for everybody.
Yeah.
So I'm eager to share a little bit about your background. And there are a couple things I want to make sure I hit on, but one in particular is change management. So I know what change means. I know what management means, but can you share a little bit more with the audience about what change management means to you and maybe give a couple of examples of how you work with people to help facilitate that?
Sure. Well, change is inevitable for all of us. And it's really one of those things that, as a culture and as a larger society, it happens a lot more quickly than it used to. The change horizon has sort of shrunk. Whereas before, with technology and otherwise, you would see things happen maybe over the course of 10 or 20 years, whereas now it's in a very, it's in a shortened space. So as people, change management is really about addressing how we adapt to it. So, and there's obviously for many people going to be resistance. There's going to be a matter of, trying to understand why it's happening. Change management is really making sure people understand the why and making sure that they have the tools to be able to navigate it effectively. So it's coming to, accepting it to a certain extent and really also realizing what are the things that we're ultimately going to see positively or negatively, and how can we embrace that and actually change ourselves on the other side of it. It's basically getting to the new state as opposed to, we're going from current state to old state. How can we best thrive within that new state?
So you bring something up that was on my mind as well. So change can be positive as well as negative. But I'm guessing that oftentimes when you're brought in, it's perceived negative change, right? Because if somebody's going through something positive, is that accurate? Is that an accurate assumption?
Definitely. I mean, with any change, even if in many ways it's positive, there will always be some sort of resistance to it because we as human beings have very different, comfort levels with adaptability. What are the things that we really, some people like change all the time. Other people are very resistant to it. So it's really understanding that not all of us are on that same path. So, and there's, there are change curves and other things that have been established in the world. And it's really important to understand that, even though there might be some good, there's going to be some, some struggle at the same time. So understanding that you go through, this is the uptick, I'm feeling good. Maybe there's going to be, what we call the trough. This is the time where, well, I'm not in my comfort zone, but I have to figure it out. I think we've all been in that, where there's times where, we're not in our comfort zone, we're not in that sweet space, and we really have to learn how to build new muscles and make sure that we're adapting to what's been presented to us, whether we're able to control the change or not. And making sure that we're taking those best new skills into that new world, and that we're able to, to continue to thrive in a new way, whether or not we've decided to make the change or it's actually been, given or delivered to us.
And is most of the work that you're doing with change management a one-on-one basis? So you're speaking with the leader directly, or is it with somebody senior within the organization and helping them facilitate the techniques that you work with?
It's really both. I mean, as a coach, I work mostly with individuals, but there's also some teams and organizations. So, but I also do work on organizational projects. So I work with companies that are doing technology implementations, so new systems, making sure that it's not just being rolled out, but that people actually want to use the system and use it. You know, the company's making a major investment. The companies want to make sure that they're actually getting a good return on their investment and that people are using it in the way that they intend to. So it's maximizing investment at that level. And also when you've done a reorganization of teams, you want to make sure that you've put people in the right roles and that you've given them the tool set to do well in those roles. So, and you know, this is very much what a lot of us are living with right now during COVID is, you know, we're having to pivot in a lot of different ways. Sometimes our skill sets are, you know, are not necessarily going to help serve us for what our jobs are evolving into or what our industries are going to be. So it's a matter of working either with organizations or individuals to determine what are the skill sets or what are the talents that I really need to make sure that I'm doing well in my job in future state. And how do I make sure that I'm working towards getting there? So I'll work with individuals, teams, larger projects, just as far as making sure that we understand the impact. It really is, that's the key thing about change management is what is the impact and understanding that it might not impact all of the people the same way. So having a great, you know, a firm understanding of what that impact is going to be, then making sure that you have a plan to be able to roll it out and addressing different areas of concern or resistance. And, you know, also embracing some of that discomfort and walking people through that.
So today, in a time when there's a pandemic going on, my guess is anybody listening to this is saying, I'm going through change. Of course I'm going through change. What would you advise to an anonymous person that's going through change? Like what techniques would you suggest that they try to implement or exercises that they try to implement? And like, for instance, I don't know if you can hear the jackhammer in the background.
Yeah.
We're just pivoting all over the place here these days. But in all sincerity, anybody listening is probably saying, yeah, I'm going through change right now. Is there any morsel that you would recommend that people lean into?
Well, I do think that mindfulness is a big part of that. And that's really a matter of, you know, in life, as we said, we never know what change is going to be delivered to us. There is uncertainty now all around us. So what we have to do is become more comfortable with uncertainty. And with mindfulness, it allows you to be a little bit more in that space, to actually to not just push it away and be distracted, because we're all so good at distractions. You know, I mean, whether it's scrolling through social media or, you know, watching something, you know, binge watching, which I'm not saying is a bad thing, but there's times when if we're using that as something to take us away from what we really need to be feeling in a certain area to be able to address, these are uncomfortable feelings, this is the fear, these are the, you know, these are the things that are potentially holding me back from thriving through this change. So understanding why are we uncomfortable, spending some time on really and truly understanding where that's coming from, I think is really important. And for me, meditation has been a big part of that. And also daily reflection, also making sure that I am looking back on, you know, journaling at the end of the day and at the beginning of the day. What was hard? What am I proud of? What did I do well? What are things that maybe I want to show up a little bit differently or want to be able to manage better? And what are things that maybe I just didn't want to deal with today that are still on my, you know, sort of larger to-do list? It doesn't mean that I'm going to push them away forever, but I want to make sure I get to them at some point to help navigate through it. Because I think what's very important for us to understand is that, you know, we only have so much control of the circumstances that are being delivered to us. We can control how we react to them and how we respond. And that's where mindfulness and reflection and other things with meditation and really and truly, you know, having conversations with people that are meaningful as opposed to just locking it away in a box and pretending it doesn't exist, then it's just sitting in a box festering. So let's as much as we can. That's a very hard thing for a lot of people right now, obviously, that are working remotely, that are, you know, parenting, and also doing school. I mean, remote learning with, you know, for parents, I have so much respect for so many of my friends and colleagues and clients that are going through that right now. So giving grace to ourselves, giving grace to other people, but also finding time for self-care, making sure that we are scheduling that. It's incredibly important to understand, because we're not going to be better on the other side of this unless we take the time to truly understand it and to make sure that we're committed to not just, you know, surviving, but to actually thrive.
Yeah, one of my co-founder, Claire, had mentioned this at the beginning of a yoga class that we film all of our yoga classes, but she said that it's almost like you have to put your air mask on before you can help the people around you. She used the analogy of when we used to fly on airplanes, but it's so true. We aren't going to help the people around us unless we're in a pretty good, solid place. And as you noted, like whether you're a leader of a business or a parent, there are other people that rely on us. We have to be, as strong and as mentally well as we can be.
Definitely. And I think that for a lot of people that are caregivers by nature, they tend to even take on more in a time like this. So, and because there's so many more demands from, kids that are at home 24 hours a day, it's really a matter of, okay, how do you bring your best self to that time, but also find time to to reset and to regenerate, because you have to put your own oxygen mask on first. I love that phrase because it's so true. And I think that goes for personally, professionally. We are our own toolkit. And in order for me to best use my tools, I need to make sure that they're well oiled, that they're in a good place, and that I know how to use them well. So taking the time to make sure that those tools are the tools that I need and that I'm bringing the right ones out at the right time is incredibly important.
So speaking of the toolkit, are there any other tools that you recommend to people that are going through change that might reach out to you for suggestions?
Yeah, I think it's really, being more in tune with what is making us uncomfortable and figuring out why. Because I think a lot of us just get to a point of like knowing, okay, this is icky and I don't really want to be here. If you deliberately spend a little bit of time on why do I feel icky? Why is this really bothering me? And now there's certain times like I was walking my dog and he can bark at other dogs, but certain days I get really triggered by that. It's like, why am I so triggered by this right now? And because of, I was just watching the news for an hour. That's probably something that is bringing a certain amount of anxiety and, to a certain degree, fear into my life. And I don't want that to then affect, my enjoying the city as much as I can, my relationship with my dog. How am I showing up at any point in my life and potentially sacrificing my connection with other people and relationships based on anxieties and other things that are there. So if we, I think, just give ourselves time to understand where it's coming from and to give ourselves a little bit of time for that grace, then it also helps to understand, well, maybe I don't want to spend time and anxiety on this. Maybe, we can move through it. We can become a little bit more flexible in how we're dealing with things and also improve our relationships with other people.
But there's a question that I've asked our two prior guests that I'm going to ask you as well. For mindfulness and meditation, it's all about trying to train your brain to focus on the present moment. And you've highlighted a lot of reasons why present moment is a great way to focus. It's respectful to whatever you're doing or the person who you're speaking with. It also happens to make you more productive as opposed to multitasking and thinking all over the place. But our brains are programmed to think, and they're inclined to think about the past, and they're inclined to think about the future. I, as a business owner, tend to be more focused on the future, and I have to remind myself, don't plan too far out in advance. Let's just be in this moment. How are you wired? What's your natural inclination?
I overthink, undoubtedly, and
you have a brain, and that's what the brain's supposed to do.
Yeah, I overthink, and honestly, there have been certain times in my life, because especially over the past few years when I've done professional reinvention and pivots and otherwise, there's a certain amount of anxiety that comes with that. And I worry about, well, what if I make the right decision? And I've experienced this as a leader. What if I do something that affects my people in a bad way? And it's not necessarily going to be better for the organization or people or otherwise. So I think it is that combination of what are the things that you can do now that you can have control over, with the future in mind, but also not getting so wrapped up in what are the things that can potentially go wrong in the future that it's holding you back now.
It does sound like you're also more inclined towards the future than lamenting over the past.
Yeah, I do think that reflection is incredibly important, and I don't think that enough of us do that, to look back and to say, how did I do? Did I do well? Did I not? How could I have done it differently? But I want to make sure that I'm using that productively and not obsessing over that it's going to hold me back in the future. So yes, I am forward thinking for sure, but I think it's a matter of making sure that, as I do take time to think, if I make this decision now, how is that going to impact me in the future, for better or worse? So it is important to tie those two together, but to not get too, I think, wrapped around the axle on letting one eclipse the other.
Have you, we just launched a new app. Our studio is closed. So a lot of people that loved being in our space and adored our guides are not able to be with them. So we recently launched an app, Chill Anywhere. Have you had a chance to kick the tires on it?
Yes, I've been using it. And I have to say, I really do enjoy I'm amazed in a short period of time, the variety of meditations that you've been able to offer in it.
Oh, well, thank you. And you've never been to our studio. I mean, you're in Seattle, we're in Chicago. So thank you for giving it a shot. I appreciate it.
I meditate every morning, so having apps is really important. And that was before COVID. So it's a bigger convenience for me just on a daily basis, despite pandemic.
Yeah, I'm so proud of our team and the guides that we have, both for meditation and for yoga. It's not easy for them. We're not the only studio that's closed. And so I think that they appreciate the opportunity to create new content and to hopefully make some new connections. So, thank you for giving it a try, not just on behalf of me, but on behalf of the teachers that are creating content for people like you. So thank you for doing that.
Well, and good on you for being able to do that pivot in a short, fast period of time. So, and really recognizing that, okay, we need to figure out what's going to work moving forward, and supporting your team. And, that takes a lot of work and a lot of smarts. So good for you.
Thank you. Well, we've got, people are really passionate about what we're doing. And I think that we all know it works. So for as long as we can, we're going to try to keep creating content and helping as many people as we can.
That's great.
So
keep up the great work.
Before we wrap up, Suzanne, first of all, if people are listening to this and they'd like to learn more about your change management, leadership, consulting, advising, how can they get in touch with you? But also, is there anything else that I neglected to ask you that you'd like to make sure people know about you?
No, I mean, my company is Weller Collaboration. So, and you can find me at wellercollaboration.com. I really, I sort of call myself the change Sherpa. So I have navigated various changes in my life, and I really thrive by helping people realize positive change in theirs and really becoming unlocked and getting to their future state. So for me, it's about, I love talking about change. I can definitely be a bit of a change nerd. So, but at the same time, I want to respect people that don't necessarily think that change is going to be, the best thing for them in their lives, and how can they best manage it if it's being delivered to them as well. So I'm inspired by, all of the different people that have come into my life that have positively impacted me and made me change in a positive way. And yeah, so this is more of a, this is going to be poorly said. Now is probably the most important time to really be thinking about how change is really defining us as human beings on an individual level. So, and the better that we can, be flexible for what's going to come next, and the more that we can actually get in the driver's seat and feel good about where we're going, the more, confident and vital I think that is, just to move us forward.
Yep, and oftentimes doors close, we get really nervous and tense, but it results in other doors opening that end up being even better, or at least different and interesting, right?
Yeah. Letting go is a big part of all of this. So, and, as we're seeing in the larger world right now too, it's learning and unlearning. We need to look back and say, what are the things that we didn't do so well in the past? And what are the things that we can change into better selves, into better world moving forward.
Well, thank you so much for spending some time with me and with anybody who's listening to us today. Please know how much we appreciate your time, and it's been a pleasure getting to know you better. I hope that we can continue to get to know each other better in the future too.
I would love that, Laura, and I'm super excited for what you and your team are doing. So thank you so much for having me.
I look forward to update calls in the future.